Okay, here we go. So the very first thing I want us to do is figure out then, if we have all these experiences with poetry and we can name them, figure out what is poetry and what is prose. So prose would be anything that is not poetry. Essay writing, short stories, novels, all of that is considered prose. And somehow people have decided poetry, it's something different than all those other genres and categories. So in those same pairs that you were working in, or the same triplets, I want you to figure out what is prose and what is poetry. You'll need a piece of paper. You're going to draw a Venn diagram for me. Actually, you know what? I think I got Venn diagram somewhere.
The middle space is always too small. It's all one.
Oh, the diagram. Okay. Oh, never mind. See, I thought you said.
Never mind. I don't know where they are. Yeah, you gotta draw one. If you'd like to, you can even draw it inside your poetry packet where you find a blank space, because those are yours. You can keep forever. Forever. All right, now there are obviously things that poetry and prose share. You'll put a lot of stuff in between here, but what you're going for here is to try to distinguish them too. I'm gonna only give you 5 minutes to try and do this, so just kind of like, I don't know, your first impressions here. 5 minutes to try to name qualities of poetry, qualities of prose, and then what they both share. All right, give it a try. You hate midnight?
They're hard to draw.
Just the two circles?
And
you know how hard it is to draw a circle?
I mean,
draw circles.
mine aren't really circles either,
I'm
but
literally in an AP art class.
I feel okay about it.
I can draw tiny circles.
Interesting. Okay. All right, let's take a look at this. Okay, you're gonna have to tell me what that means.
Oh, straightforward.
Straightforward. Okay. Traditional sentence structure, informative. So tell me what you mean by straightforward.
It's like art. It's but it can be artsy, but it's generally the words are there, and you just have to kind of close without trying to like think as much of such a deeper meaning.
Oh, okay.
It's not as because there's like metaphors and like all that stuff, but it's a little more easier.
Okay, so meaning more apparent, maybe. All right, and then traditional sentence structure, like the subject, verb, object, or do you just mean, who said that one? Grammatically correct sentence structure?
Both of like what you said, just like you're not gonna be like writing your college essay and have like super like artsy sentences.
Okay, cool. So prose then, and I think traditional sentence structure too, we might think like then more essayistic, like more, there seems to be, and this seems so straightforward too, there seems to be a clearer purpose to it and that we understand that purpose more readily. All right, how about informative? What do we mean by that? Who put informative?
I did, but I'm not the one that came up with it.
Oh, who came up with it? Enoch? Did you do informative?
Yeah.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
Like the purpose of it is more like
Okay. Okay, got it. Convey info. Okay, and then over here on poetry, we've got free form. What does that mean?
Oh, well, I said you can be a lot more playful with the structure and sentences.
Okay. Structure, playful. All right, cool. And over here, we're saying that it's more about personal meaning, and it looks like more about feeling and senses, or an informal feeling. All of those kind of go together. Why does poetry feel like it's more about feelings? Yeah.
Okay, so I've read a few poems. I wouldn't say a lot. But when you're reading poetry, there's always like the tone of the poem becomes more apparent as you read on and as you look at those hidden metaphors. For prose, it's always like it is a bit straightforward in the way it's kind of like telling you like there can be hidden meaning that you can find. But with poetry, it's all about the feeling. Like you can throw random words in there, be like pop, electric, and you would feel the emotions that those words bring. So yeah, aesthetic.
Yeah, I mean, that's the word for it, right? Is that when through writing or through art or through anything like that, you can create a feeling in your viewer or reader. That's what aesthetics is, right? Through the form of it, you create this feeling. So maybe poetry is like that. But haven't you guys ever read like a really good book and felt like that feeling too? I don't know, man.
I think it's all about the feeling.
Yeah, right. What about meter though? What is meter? Yeah.
Like, so sentences will have like a syllabic structure that
Yeah.
makes it have like a beat, like Shakespeare as I forgot what it's called, but he has a very specific meter.
Iambic pentameter
Yeah,
usually.
like fancy word.
Yeah. Okay, so it's got this kind of syllabic structure that creates this kind of rhythm, right? All right, and then here in the middle, we've got, okay, they're both created with words. They both try and convey something. And then what does this one say?
I forgot what I wrote.
Both can be interpreted.
Both can be interpreted with deeper meanings.
Yes.
Okay, good. I just have to look at it more carefully and listen to Asher. All right, so what I see from the middle here is that this was maybe a bit of a frustrating task, trying to delineate between the two. Is that true?
I think words is
Words, yeah. I mean, I think this is both, I think all of this is true. I mean, it does try and convey something. It's with words and you could interpret it, yeah. But is that a good definition of poetry? Okay, I'm gonna give you 2 poems. And you're going to see what you think now of your definition. So this first one is from a book of poetry called Citizen. This one includes a couple bad words, just as a warning. But I
you
think
always
can
say that, but
handle
then
it.
they're like not even like that bad of words.
Well, this one includes one of the very worst words.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
that doesn't like narrow it down.
Okay,
You already
so it's front and back. It's kind of long. I just want you to read through this poem. Again, this is a poem. It's published by Poetry Foundation.
Oh, first stanza does I have idea of what
You have an idea of what the worst word is? Yeah.
it has a beat.
Yeah.
And when you're reading this, you're not really pausing to take a breath in between each sentence. You're not thinking about each sentence. Clearly, you're reading it in one smooth fashion.
Ah, okay. So it's like you're not having to understand like the sort of narrative force behind each sentence, but you kind of just hear how it's like this sort of piling up of experiences.
You read it all with
Yeah, and so in that way, it kind of fits that idea of it being aesthetic. You get an emotion from reading it. Okay, why else would this be considered poetry, do you think? Yeah. Ah, no quotation marks. Have you guys ever read books though that have no quotation marks around the, like Cormac McCarthy doesn't use quotation marks around dialogue, and technically that's a novel for some reason, and this is poetry. But you're right that there's more like liberalities. Is that the word I'm thinking of? They take more liberties. Liberties, it's just liberty. They take more liberties with Claudia Rankine. With kind of the way it's punctuated, because it's not only that there aren't any quotation marks, but there also aren't commas always where there needs to be commas. Okay, what else? If you read this, like if I didn't tell you this is from poetry and I erased this, or this is poetry and I erased this thing at the top that said Poetry Foundation, would you classify it as poetry? You would, okay. what feels poetic about it then, right?
Like it never explicitly states the argument that it's making. It
Mhm.
kind of implies in the story.
Yeah. So if it's not kind of clear about its thesis statement, okay? Yeah, Jacob.
I feel like it's trying to draw your emotions more than regular prose would do.
Mhm.
It's with prose, it's more informative as we wrote. It's like more straightforward with being formative. But with this, it's almost trying to draw your emotions and I want to say deeper meaning, but not really, to like dig into your soul.
Yeah, so maybe it's like a combination of like really precise word choice and these liberties they're taking with the punctuation it feels like this is speaking directly to my emotions and not necessarily to my head, my reason. Yeah, Christiane?
So I feel like poetry, like the meaning of it, like it comes from the author's, like, it's from the author's heart.
Mhm.
And so they use poetry to like hide that and hide just how bare.
Oh, uh-huh.
And I think a lot of that.
Okay, good. So it's like the vulnerability that you see and the way that they're kind of talking around that, like central pain, kind of. I really like that. That's a beautiful thought. Yeah, Sammy.
I think part of like again that informal kind of feeling with especially with using words.
Uh-huh.
Maybe something you wouldn't use in a college essay.
Right.
Um,
Would you use it in a novel though, or a short story?
I mean, me personally.
Not you. I'm not saying you. Claudia Rankine is Black, so it's a different situation, right? But like, I mean, we've seen it in other books. We've seen this kind of like informal language, right?
It just feels a little more because in like novels it would probably be quoting
Yeah.
like characters, whereas here it's just saying straight up.
Yeah, right.
Hopefully it would be quoting.
Yeah. Any other distinguishing characteristics, Race?
I think this is a structure.
Yeah. What about the structure?
Like, I'm fine, stand by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
The writer does that, like, they
Mm-hmm.
use the last lines.
Yeah, that repetition too in the structure, the way that there's kind of a rhythm to the paragraphs and a rhythm to like the visuals on the page, but then also the so sorry, so sorry, I am sorry. Like the repetition often gives us a kind of hint that they are paying so much attention, not just to the meaning of the sentences, but to the sound of the words, you know? So this goes back to like the meter idea, that there's like something being done with the syllables that also sounds a little bit like pleasing. You can imagine this piece being read out loud and sounding nice to your ear too. Okay, I'm going to give you a bunch of definitions of poems. So no one has been able to define poetry to everyone's satisfaction. So it's meant to be a frustrating exercise because everyone disagrees on what poems actually are. And every poet is always trying to like push the limits of what poetry actually is. I forgot I needed the projector again. No, sorry. There we go. All right, so same person you've been working with or people, I want you to decide which one of these, and you don't have to agree on it, but which one of these you think is the most accurate definition of poetry. We've got theorists here, and we've got poets, we've got writers, all sorts of, from all the spectrum, like Burke there is a theorist from 1700s. We've got Poe and Coleridge who are poets, so that it's I guess you have to read it first.
So every, it's important to remember. Well, stupid. I think 2, 7, and 8. Pretty telling. Pretty cool. Poetry. Poetry is not it could, that's why I say 7. I love it, but poetry, that's where it's the best word. Certainly, I would find that is. And poetry. And then that's why there's 8 is good for poetry. Because there's it's part of the words that hurt us. They make you think, that make you question. Yeah, all of it. Poetry is not best word. Yes. So I know if it satisfies any one of them. Because when I'm physical.
It is literally 7 a.m.
It's 7 a.m. So that's somewhere in my mind.
How? Oh, what's that? You can't argue against me.
All right, which ones are you liking best? Let's hear. Which ones really vibe with you? Maybe that's just it. Maybe now we'd say poetry's a vibe. That's it. It's a vibe.
It's a couple of
So that's
vibes.
It's multiple vibes. Which one do you like of these though? Yeah, Kale.
I like 2, 7, 8.
Okay, thoughts that breathe and words that burn. The best words in the best order and rhythmical creation of beauty in words. Why are those the ones you like?
I think, okay, so the first one, it doesn't satisfy all poetry.
Ah.
Words that burn sounds kind of like angry or like
Mhm.
definitely is like trying to pull you down to its level of making you really think. But I think poetry is thoughts that really like ties into that aesthetic of it's thoughts that are alive.
Yeah, okay, so they're not static, they're not firm on the page, but they might like breathe, they might find life in somebody who reads them.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like, 7 because I think the best word is the best word. It just kind of like sums up poetry.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I like that one a lot.
Just like,
That's the one that like, I feel like a disgruntled student who doesn't want to be reading poetry might agree with too. Like best words, best order, fine.
It sounds good. And then 8 is poetry is the rhythmical creation of beauty. I think beauty words is debatable, but the rhythmical creation is nice. Like it ties into that beat or that tempo.
Yeah. I think it's really fun that Poe is the one who says that it's beauty in words, because so many of Poe's poems are about like people dying or wasting away or, you know, not having the love of your life that you want. And yet he's saying this is beauty in words, which I really like. Jacob, what were you gonna say?
So I feel like with number 2, she said that words that burn is a bad thing always,
Mhm.
but I feel like we also describe burning as a good thing, like burning of the heart. like
Yeah.
Your heart's on fire, burning passion.
Right.
Yeah, so I feel like it's not a very bad thing of burning. It's not
Right.
negative, it's positive too.
Oh, I totally agree. So it's the words that burn is more like words that sear, maybe, like words that like make their impression, or words that sizzle, something like that. That like, yeah, I like that. I'm creating a poem as I go. Any others that we are attached to that we like? Yeah.
I also really like it just because it started like poetry is just like with the heart. Like
Yeah.
like I thought it like
Right. Right. So to create like beauty, usually we associate that with things that we can see and appreciate that way. But here, beauty through words is all about like artistic creation. I really like that too. Sammy?
Now looking at we lost it. We already said, but I also think that most personalization, like physically bringing it to life and stuff,
Yes.
as a person.
So which one is this one too? Yeah, I agree. So it's like the words itself have some kind of agency when you put them into a poem, or some kind of will. I like number 10 a lot too. Heals the wounds inflicted by reason. I think a lot of times poets are trying to work through something that we think is kind of common sense, or we've already sort of figured out what it means, and poems are trying to undercut that and say like, maybe we don't know everything. I always like that. Always like anything that's against hubris. Race, were you gonna say one too?
Yeah, I like number 3 a lot. It kind of stresses the
Mhm. Yes, and what I really like about that too is it's like a dash of the dictionary. It's almost like it has a lot of faith in language being able to express things that otherwise sometimes feel inexpressible. Like I kind of heard it when Jacob was talking about like what kind of burns, you know? It's like, how do we describe what emotions really feel like? And it seems like poets are often trying to do that, to try and use language, which sometimes feels inefficient, to really describe things that are outside of the bounds of, you know, our rational minds. All right, so let's look at another poem now. Open up those poetry packets to the first gray page. We're gonna find a poem about plums. That's there. Yeah, this is just to say. Okay, one of my very favorite poems, this one. And we've been talking all about how poetry is so emotional and it expresses, you know, these words that burn. Okay, listen to this poem. This is just to say, I have eaten the plums that were in the icebox in which you were probably saving for breakfast. Forgive me, they were delicious, so sweet and so cold. Poem. All right, let's talk about this one now. Because this one is one of my favorite poems, we're going to start going kind of line by line through the poem. So by the end of this, I am really hoping you see why this is the best poem.
Okay. Okay.
All right, here we go. So the title, I think this poem starts with the title. I don't think you can read it just saying, I have eaten the plums that were in the icebox. I think you have to start with, this is just to say. So tell me about that line. What stands out to you in that line in the word choice? Sammy?
It's just kind of like a, okay, by the way.
All right, good. There's some kind of like, it's like an afterthought. There's some sort of like dismissal going on. This is just to say, Remy? Okay, Why start with this? What is the this referring to? This and that always refers to something. Yeah.
I think it's like specifying it, like, I feel like it hints that there is no deeper meaning
Ah.
other than this is just to say, I'm just saying this is what I'm saying.
Okay, good. So the this then is referring to the thing that is being said, right? This is just to say, and then he's gonna say these other things. So it's a way of saying like, this is just like surface level. I think we're also getting that from the just. What does the just do in that sentence? Or in that title? Yeah.
It makes it seem like it's what they're about to say is like less important than what like the rest of the conversation that we don't know they've been having.
Right. Okay. So there must be something. If you're already saying there's there, right? So there has to be two characters here at least. There's somebody. There's a me and there's a you in this poem, and it seems like maybe they have some kind of relationship. And the just is saying in juxtaposition to that relationship, this is like no big deal at all. This is just a small thing. So what is so the word just? It's like a throwaway. Like what does the word just mean? It's a meh. Okay, it's not important. It's non-threatening, maybe. Do you ever okay, when I am apologizing, I'm not a good apologizer. I use just a lot. So I'll say, oh, I was just like thinking, you know, I was just really mad, or I was just in the moment. Like it's almost like this way of like padding the apology, or it's an excuse, I think, isn't it? Why do we say just so much in that way? Like I'll have a student come and they've cheated and I was just so tired, you know, it's like, you cheated. Yeah, Audrey.
It's just as kind of like trying to make an excusal for an action. It's like, I didn't have malicious intent. I just was doing this.
Okay.
So it's to like disconnect from any ulterior motive.
Disconnect. I like that. Disconnect from ulterior motives. It almost makes it seem sort of offhanded than where we started with. Yeah, go.
I think it's just saying all there is to it. Like when you were talking about that cheating, like, oh, I just cheated because
Yeah.
I was just tired.
Yeah.
It's sort of like that was it. I was just tired. That's my excuse.
Again,
Very long.
surface level, like you don't go deeper with this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Surface level arguments.
Yes, Jacob.
So I know a little bit of like learning about like leadership, and part of that was learning how to like present. And just is what we find as a filler word. It's a word that people use almost to distract from what they're gonna say next. And lots of times it can be a problem for presenters is they'll use it when they're like wasting time like this, or use like a lot,
Yeah.
like I'll see like, it's like this. And
It's like this.
It just distracts from the presentation.
Yeah.
And like, I feel like by using that, he's trying to distract from what he has to say next, like say that he's taking something.
I love that. Okay, so maybe it actually is a big deal taking the plums, and he's trying to distract or deflect that. And maybe it's because of a lack of self-confidence. I feel like some of the speakers who say the most,
Yeah.
it's because I'm gonna do it too. It's either because they're looking for the right words, or it's because they're not super confident in being up in front of people. So it might be a lack of confidence here. Oh, I like that a lot. Christian?
The thing about the word just is 9 times out of 10 you can think about it in a sentence still.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like the word just is
Mm-hmm. And yet it has this emotional impact where it makes it seem more insecure somehow. Yeah, but it's not that important, this idea that it's just. So maybe his apology, that this that's going to be coming up is not that important. Sammy?
Yeah, kind of going off of that, like the kind of excuse. The poem kind of seems like the guy, not gonna lie, it seems like he got high and got hungry and was like, plums.
And maybe we get that partly from this idea that he needs to use the distraction word like
Yeah.
just. Okay. Yeah, I like that. What, we can think of just in another way. You guys wrote the crime and punishment papers about justice. Could we read this title, This is Just to Say?
I stole.
You definitely can. It's a pun. Everything in poetry can be a pun. This is just to say, in that by giving you this excuse, I'm going to create justice for the injustice that I have done to you by eating the plums. So it's just to say, yeah.
I like the whole thing, like to distract, to evade
Mhm.
idea. I think
Ooh, evade. I can't write that down.
if you read the rest of the poem, especially like the first stanza, I have eaten the plums that were in the icebox. You could see him saying that in passing, like, oh hey, I was just chilling yesterday. I ate the plums.
Yeah.
I know you were saving them. Anyways, you want to go get food later? Just like he's trying to like say that he's done something, but he doesn't want to stay on.
Yeah, and maybe it's not that big of a deal. I mean, they're plums, maybe it really isn't that big a deal. And he's like, oh, this is just to say, like, I ate those. Let's just get more plums after work today, But it could also be this evasion where it's like, oh, this is just to say, which like goes away, All right, let's look at the first stanza then. I have eaten the plums that were in the icebox. All right, so we start with the word I. Why? Good point. You could say the plums happen to have been eaten. You could drop the subject though, couldn't you, Sammy? Yeah, he's taking responsibility right from the beginning. So maybe the apology seemed a little insincere when he was saying this is just to say, kind of poo-pooing it, But he's saying he's actually taking ownership. I did this thing, I have eaten the plums that were in the icebox. I have eaten. Why that construction? It could have been I ate the plums that were in the icebox. But he uses something that sounds so gross when you say it out loud. Have eaten. Eaten. It's such a nasty word.
I've eaten the plums.
Oh, Kale says it nicer than I do. I think it's my Utah accent. Like, eaten is how I just naturally
Not even a
pronounce it.
place where they pronounce the T in mountain.
Yeah, I don't do that. I say mountain. I have eaten. No, it's eaten. So why use that construction, do you think? Have eaten instead of ate. Oh, maybe they sound gross. Oh, you're gonna find out how delicious, so sweet, and so cold they are, though.
It sounds better. Like more authoritative.
I have eaten. Why does that sound more
Well,
authoritative?
it's like I have eaten the plums.
Yeah.
And just like
You do. You want to do this, right?
yeah,
What does that
I
mean
know,
for an
I ate
apology, though?
I think
I
There's-
have eaten. Like if you walked into your roommates, I have eaten the plums.
I
feel like
think
you should say that if you're walking in with like a JoJo stance. Sorry, bro, I ate your plums.
I think he's not apologizing. I think
Okay.
he's saying, oh yeah, I ate those plums. So sorry about that.
Yeah.
But they were real good.
Yeah. So it's this like, I am important. I deserved the plums. I have eaten them. Sammy?
Kind of like, saying, like taking pride and being like, hell yeah, I ate those plums.
Yeah, there's a kind of pride here at the beginning, I think. Yeah, that he's putting himself first in the apology. Like he could have said, hey, those plums that were like in the icebox? Like I ate them, but no, he says, I have eaten the plums, and kind of like announces it with this kind of like pride. Also, look at the plums. It could have, and Kale even said it this way, those plums, but no, it's the plums. Why the as the article? But Audrey, yeah.
I don't know. I didn't have something about.
Yeah, I have
plums,
eaten.
but-
Okay.
But it's kind of like, it's like accountability. He's like fully accepted that I've been the one to eat the plums. He
Good.
doesn't feel bad about the fact that he ate plums.
Ah,
He's like,
okay.
I'm telling you, so you can know. He's like, I'm sorry you feel bad that my actions. I'm sorry that you feel bad. I'm not sorry that I did the action. I'm sorry you feel that.
One of those kind of apologies.
Yeah, it feels like that. to me.
Yeah,
He's like,
and
I'm glad I ate the plums.
especially after this
Sorry.
is just to say, and then I have eaten the plums. It does have that kind of effect, Remy.
Moving on to the
Yeah.
by saying the plums, it makes it seem like they were the only plums in the icebox instead of those plums, like, it's like, there's more
Yeah.
plums. I'm just eating your plums because they have a vendetta against you. It's, I've eaten like all the plums and now you don't.
Okay, good. It's like there were specific plums in the icebox. They weren't necessarily, he didn't say your plums, because that would kind of make it seem
Cruel.
yeah, either cruel, I have eaten your plums, or it's like, oh, he actually is taking accountability for the action and knows that it's wrong, but he's saying the plums, so it's sort of like vague that they were in the icebox, like maybe we both had ownership of these plums, but they're not just some plums, they're special plums, they're the ones, you know, so maybe he ate all of them, but he at least ate the plums, you know, the good ones. Yeah, Sammy.
Like superior man theory.
He's like, I deserve, like Napoleon would eat the plums that he wanted to, so I'm going to as well. Yeah. Why, what do you think is significant? Like, I don't know if this happened or not. Maybe Carlos Williams actually did eat some plums and then write this that day. But let's pretend it's, you know, this comes from his imagination. Why multiple plums?
Why would you only eat one plum?
Okay, maybe so it's he's not insatiable, he just is normal and needs some fruit. Eat multiple.
I
But
must
I mean,
have
some plums are like, I
multiple.
meant to bring in plums today, but I got lazy about going to the store. Some plums are like normal sized, you know?
I have a plum tree. I could bring some next time.
You should bring some
Yes.
plums.
I want some plums.
I think it's important that he didn't just eat one. He didn't eat one plum and then say, ooh, I shouldn't have done that. Like, these are the plums, right? No, he just eats all of the plums. Keeps going. Maybe that's where we get this idea that he's high. I don't know. Is that there are multiple plums and he won't stop. Yeah, Audrey.
It's like voracious.
Yes.
I like that word, voracious. He seems voracious.
He
He's
seems
like eating the
voracious.
plums. It's kind of like I ate all of them.
Yeah.
I
all
think
of them.
I was hungry and so I have eaten all of
It's
the
like
plums.
he
greedy.
did it in
Mhm.
one
Greedy.
sitting.
Yeah, and it
Like-
seems like one sitting too. It's not like over the course of some
Delicious.
sort of.
Deliciously eating your plums.
Mhm.
You know, when you're eating candy, you're like, oh, I'll just have a piece. And you're like, but it's real good.
So it's
And
another
then
testament to how delicious they were. Sammy?
Kind of going back to the point that he's probably high.
See what I mean? Some people read too much into it and some people want to stay surface level. Okay, go ahead.
I have friends who like smoke and it's not, and like they like don't feel bad when they eat stuff.
They've lost their moral compass.
Yeah, but like that sounds real.
Don't smoke pot, you lose your moral compass.
I murdered someone.
Or like my cousin is anorexic and she uses marijuana to help it, and it's because it removes that like guilt.
Oh, like food related guilt, especially. Oh, okay, I got it.
Oh,
All right. Yeah, Christian.
So you know when like your older brother eats the candy bar you were saving for later?
Yes.
That's the feeling I'm getting.
Yes, I think that's right. It's infuriating when people eat your things. Even if, okay, so I'll have like, I'm a saver, a little bit of like a hoarder with food. And so I'll have like all my treats, you know, and I'm saving them. And yes, I'm a grown adult and I can go to the grocery store and I can buy more treats. There's always more treats. But if my husband goes into my treats that I've been saving and eats one, it is like a personal affront, right? Like that hurts my feelings. It's not just about the food anymore. Sydney?
So my brother is like this like all these things on purpose.
Uh-huh.
And so like if I'm mad at him, I'm like, "Guys, I really want that Reese's peanut. I'm mad at you, I'm gonna eat it so you can't have it."
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of get that feeling from this. It's like, hey, I ate your plums.
It's like
what are you gonna do
malicious.
about it?
It's
Yeah.
malicious and targeted.
Like he's taunting them. What are you gonna do? I ate all of your plums.
Yeah, right. Like they're gone. So what are you gonna do? Yeah, Remy.
Going off that, it makes it seem like I, in this sense, is older or more superior to the person they're talking to. in that. Saying, I've eaten your plums, saying you, like I did it as a way against you because I have power over you in a sense. So what are you gonna do?
Right. And that partly comes from like the dismissive way he starts it out too. So it's like, I'm not afraid of you. But yeah.
I disagree with like the malicious.
Okay.
I think he ate those plums and he just doesn't feel bad. And,
Okay,
Like,
offhanded, so more pothead.
it seems, yeah, it seems like it doesn't specify that they were anyone's specific plums. So they were just like there
At least
for
not in this stanza.
everyone.
Yeah,
And he's just like, hey, I ate those plums that we bought the other day.
okay,
Sad, so sad. Let's move on.
got it. Why plums? Would this have had the same effect if you ate the apples that were in the icebox?
No.
Okay, tell me about plums then, Sydney.
Like, that's just like when you put it like an apple is like really hard and crisp and it takes like a lot more to eat it.
Mm-hmm.
But plums are just like so soft. You
Mm,
eat them in like 5 seconds.
okay, good. So you can scarf plums better than you can scarf apples, so it makes more sense that you eat a bunch of them too. Sammy?
I feel like plums go back faster.
Oh, okay.
Pretty sure if you throw apples in the fridge, they can last for a solid few months.
Yeah, yeah. And plums have like a perfect point to them where they are perfectly ripe. Asher?
I feel like it's the opposite, because like, compare it not to apples or something, but like to there's like crackers in a bowl on the counter. You can eat those like, and they're gone like almost by accident, but if it's a plum in an ice box, you don't eat a plum by accident. There's a pit you have to throw away too.
Yes, excellent. You have to like open the fridge and take them out and like maybe wash them, hopefully, and then you have to like be careful of the pit and you kind of are like picking at it a little and then you throw. Yeah, I totally get that. It's not absentmindedly ate the pretzels. There seems to be something intentional there.
Pretzels.
Plums are beautiful too, aren't they? That deep purple color that most plums are, and that they can be almost black, but there's still that purple shine to them, and they catch the light. And just picture like, I really should have brought plums, like the dew on the plum that's kind of like beating up, and they're gorgeous. They're gorgeous fruit. And also say the word plum. 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 That is a nice word to say. It's a nice mouthful. Plum. Apple. Apple is not a nice word in English. Plum is nice. It sounds round. It sounds like what it is. It sounds like juicy and soft, Yeah.
I think whenever I hear the word plum, I imagine like small children with like sticky fingers on like a hot day, just eating plums from a tree, and they're just picking them, and it's just like such a warm, soft feeling that you get from the word.
It's a wholesome fruit. Yeah. Yeah.
It also reminds me of like the Nutcracker, because like, who's ever actually eaten a sugar plum? I don't actually know what that is.
No, me
But
neither.
a sugar plum just sounds like something that would be good.
Yes, and part of that I think is, sugar is great, but I think a lot of that is the plum part of it and how it sounds nice in your mouth. That plosive with the P, pl, and then the like, and you literally end with like plum. That's a delicious fruit. All right, moving on. That's the first 2 lines. All right, I've eaten the plums that were in the icebox. What does in the icebox tell us about the setting of this poem? Sydney.
I don't know if like so much is like it shows like they had to go open the ice box. They show the effort. They're like, I'm going to go those.
Good intentionality to the icebox. Jacob.
I feel like by using icebox, well, it shows that it's from an older time than us. It shows that here in 1938 is what was written.
Yeah.
Or copyrighted. And I feel like back then it was a lot harder. It was like a plum was like worth more than it would be today.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't have like as many sweet treats as we have today.
Yeah.
So I feel like a plum would be more back then than it was today.
Good point. Like a plum is like, I think we were more used to fruit being a kind of dessert back then, that has that sweetness, but also like our refrigeration was not as advanced. So it's not like you got plums year round. Like this in Utah now, you can get a plum in January, which is kind of crazy. But for him, it's like plums are in season right now. This is when I can have plums. Like there's a short window. Grace?
I feel like maybe there were plums outside of the icebox too.
Mm.
To eat the plums that were in the icebox that were colder, better.
Great point. Like it's intentionality again, but it's like intentionality on the part of the person who put them in the icebox to prepare them, and you're going to eat the prepared plums. Yeah, that's more important, I think. Sammy?
2 things. One, It says like 1939, that's right around the Great Depression, where
Mhm.
people didn't have food. But which kind of contradicts my second point, which is could have just gone into the fridge and been like, hey, what is there to eat? Ooh, plums, fine.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, so he's just,
Freezing plums.
it could be random there. Yeah, Christina,
I think that they were in the icebox and almost decided that they were.
that they were hidden.
And then he found them and was like, oh, I'm gonna eat these.
Like it's almost like a treasure box that he's opening up. And yes, I think that it gives it like, there's one barrier between him and the plums that he had to cross in order to eat them. Jill?
I feel like it's like a hot day, because they're in the ice box, and like ice box, I imagine is sort of like a freezer, like an out, like a large industrial size. What is it?
It's, I mean, it's old fashioned, so it would actually be a box with ice packed into
Oh,
it.
okay, so it'd be like a tiny thing.
Uh-huh.
All right, well, it doesn't stop the point of, you don't normally put your fruit in the freezer.
Ah, yes,
You
yes.
normally put it like, you put it in the fridge or you put it on the countertop, so it's like implies that the area they're in is like really hot
Oh,
and
good.
humid, and fruit is gonna easily develop mold.
Good, good. So it's a preservation thing. Sydney?
This feels like a long way.
Mm-hmm.
They wanna get them nice.
Mm-hmm.
Go pick the ones off the tree, but they want them cold.
Right, right. We're focusing on icebox, which I think is right, but what about the icebox? It's not just a icebox, it's the icebox. What does that tell us about their relationship to each other? Yes, exactly. You can't say, you know, it'd be really hard to say that when you don't share that thing together. You would say my icebox, but instead, we know right here that he's talking to somebody. I always assume he, that's not right, but William Carlos Williams is he, so I
I
can,
feel like it's a heat too.
just because he's taking these plums like
I
they're
think
his. and-
I think it's just the vibe, the general like. It's not necessarily that. It's just like I can imagine a guy walking in and be like, "Hey, I ate your plums."
Yeah, exactly.
And then
All
just
right.
walking out.
All right, so it's the icebox. They probably share it. That gives us either, I mean, it could be siblings, it could be, you know, a couple. Yep, it could be roommates. There, but we know that they're kind of sharing this icebox.
Enemies to lovers.
It could be, could be.
Enemies to lovers over the plums. in the icebox.
No.
All right, I
have
have
to write that.
So now we've done the first stanza, I think. I've eaten the plums that were in the icebox and which you were probably saving for breakfast. Now, if we were to speak that out loud without the poetic structure, we would say, I've eaten the plums that were in the icebox and which you were probably saving for breakfast. We wouldn't have a pause between the two. Why do you think that he's broken this into stanzas? So stanzas are when you have the lines grouped together with pauses. Remy?
It's kind of like there should be like a comma after icebox, I guess. And
Mhm.
so when he says, I've eaten the plums that were in the icebox, and then comma, and what you're probably saying, it's like he had like a realization point. He's like, oh wait, you probably were saving those for breakfast. You put them in the icebox for a reason because you wanted them to be like fresh for tomorrow or whatever. And he's like, shoot, I did this that I probably shouldn't have. But yeah.
So the middle stanza then is kind of like his realization, but it took him a pause to get to that realization where he's
Yeah.
like, oh, wait a minute. All right. Ethan?
I think he's kind of like using that space almost to capitalize. Like, if I were to go to my sister and say, oh, I ate your Snickers bar, you were probably saving it for tomorrow. It's almost
That's
like,
messed up. Yeah.
It's almost like he's like almost taking some sort of pride, like
Yeah, okay. And we know he's already started to write the apology, so we must know that he needs to apologize in some way. So it seems like he's like teasing the reader a little bit. Christiane?
I feel like he's apologizing for the realization because there's about to be like a fight. That's what's
So he's written the first stanza and he's like, I was a little bit too cavalier with my, I have eaten the plums. I need to backtrack a little bit and say like, I acknowledge you're a person too. Asher?
I feel like it's also a bit strange that he like acknowledges that they were saving it for breakfast because if they were saving it for breakfast, they probably already know. He didn't say that. It feels more like teasing them, like, just so you know, those plums, I know you're saving them, but I ate them.
Okay, so I think we've got two kind of ways of reading it then. So it's either kind of teasing them and saying like, I did this to hurt you a little bit. So I'm gonna rub it in. Or it's looking at it and saying, oh, shoot, I just realized that you like have thoughts and feelings too. And so I'm gonna acknowledge those thoughts and feelings, kind of in the way they teach you to apologize, like that must have really hurt you and I'm now taking ownership of that action. So it could be either or. Which one do we think?
I think you might be just a stoner.
I really don't think he is. He was a doctor, William Carlos Williams, so I don't think so.
I just,
Actually, that does mean he has access to a lot of things.
I would
Right.
love for an administrative Wi-Fi when we just yell medical marijuana.
In 1938, yeah.
What are we
I
talking about in that
disagree with both of them.
Oh,
I'm continuing with the idea that there's no like malicious intent.
yeah,
And I feel like those are like too harsh, like, oh, the teasing, like, oh yeah, no, I definitely want to do this. And the other one where it's just kind of like, oh wait, I just realized you're also a person. I think it's more of he was telling the person who's like, I've eaten the plums, just wanted to let you know. And oh wait, oops, you were probably saving them.
so it's
Sorry.
kind of offhanded.
Like
put it
he
that
just
way.
realized in the moment, he was like, oh wait, yeah, no, we were saving this.
Yeah, yeah. Do we get that mostly from probably?
Yeah.
Like, where are we getting our readings of this? Because we're feeling the tone, but we're not necessarily identifying the word that is giving us that tone yet. The pause, I think, is good. That break in the stanza. What do we make of probably? Do we think it's sincere, Asher?
I feel like the probably is just like an assumption that makes it so like he didn't need to assume that. He could have like played it off and said, I just ate the plums, and that would have given him less responsibility. That could also be just like taking more responsibility or teasing them more.
Yeah, I mean, it could be like, oh yeah, you were probably saving them, or I mean, he could have said something like, they were probably there for me, so I ate them. You know, like he could have made an assumption that was different to work better with his apology potentially. Sammy?
It kind of like emphasizes that oopsie, oh crap, that I wasn't supposed to do that.
The probably does.
Yeah.
Okay, Audrey?
Also, it's like uncertainty. It's like, I know you wanted them to be for your breakfast, but it wasn't 100% certain they would still be there because I ate them.
Yeah, good. Now, what do you guys think of saving being on one line by itself? It's the only word in the poem that gets its own line.
It's too long. I say it's probably.
Yeah, probably is longer. This isn't necessarily about the right syllables being in the right place, because this poem doesn't have a strict meter in the way that Shakespeare does. Yeah.
It's to emphasize that these poems are not.
All right, so really it's almost like a little warning sign there. You were saving them. When you are saving something, that is like really important that you have it later. You've done delayed gratification. Saving can be really hard. You know, I've got all this money, I'm gonna save it so that I can like have a sweet retirement. That money is just sitting there, kind of teasing you, taunting you, and you're going to put it aside and you're not going to touch it, right? So then somebody else comes along and takes that thing so that you don't get the gratification that you wanted. That saving really emphasizes that. And then for breakfast, yes, Asher.
I feel like it's significant that it's breakfast, not your breakfast.
Yep,
Perhaps the plums were meant for him.
right.
He stayed them early.
The same way that it's the icebox, it's ours, you were probably saving them for breakfast. It potentially, if they live together, it could be our breakfast, right?
I think we can safely.
So does that mean making the breakfast, or does that mean eating the plums was worse or better if he was going to share in the plums for breakfast? Remy?
Just to backtrack and add to Asher, it said which you were probably saving for breakfast, meaning that I can see it as you were saving them, so you had a purpose for them for breakfast, and so it might have been like a surprise. Hey, we get flour and plums today for breakfast instead of just flour or whatever. it is,
Yeah, right. So it was like,
Straight up flour.
so in that way, it would be worse then, because if it was a shared breakfast, because it was like this nice thing for him that he's kind of like denied her giving. I always think it's for her too. I think it's like, it's 1938. I'm picturing this woman kind of planning for breakfast, and I'm thinking of these traditional gender roles. I think that's why I always say he and her, but yeah.
I think the you is also very interesting because it implies that it was going to be their breakfast. Like, it could be for like the general breakfast, but what I kind of get is like their roommates, and it's just like they're close, but like they have their own separate food.
Yeah,
And which you were probably saving for breakfast. You were probably going to eat that,
for your breakfast.
and I.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, Jacob.
I feel like it could also mean what you, I feel like you were saving breakfast. I feel like a lot of people, they eat breakfast at different times, even couples. Like if someone wakes up earlier to go to work or something, then, and one person stays at home, like,
Yeah.
then you would probably save these for breakfast. You wake up earlier and you have these things, you're ready for breakfast, so you can just grab and go.
Yeah.
I feel like it's kind of like taking that away from.
Yes, absolutely, like upsetting the time frame. And I get that feeling too. I get this feeling of like the speaker kind of like either in the late night or early morning is like eating the plums sort of like clandestinely, like secretly eating the plums that like someone is waiting for it later on in a couple hours maybe.
Kind of going off that, I feel like if breakfast is like soon, like, in 20 minutes, and then this person was like, oh my god, where are my plums? And he's like, oh, I ate those. Were they for breakfast today?
Yes. Yes, I get the feeling of the quickness too, and I think part of that is the shortness of the stanzas and the shortness of the lines. We get this staccato kind of rhythm to it that makes me think that this is offhanded and it is also happening very quickly. Okay, long pause, stanza, and then it says, "Forgive me. They were delicious, so sweet, and so cold." Do you feel like he's actually sorry at this point?
No.
No.
Oh, definitely not.
Does anyone? Christiane?
This is what makes me think it's someone that knew they weren't supposed to eat the plum.
Why?
Because no one's just like, sorry, but they were delicious if they need it.
Good. So it's like, it's this rubbing in, right? So to go back to Ethan's example, you eat your sister's candy bar and then you're just like, it was so good. You so wish you would have eaten it, but it was so, so good. I loved it, you know, and describing it like the chocolate was so rich and the nougat or whatever, like getting really detailed about it. It does feel like, okay, you're rubbing in how delicious this was. Yeah, Kale.
But I think you can argue the fact that that second stanza wasn't going to happen originally, and that it was like a thought in between where he was gonna notify this person, and he's like, oh wait, you were probably going to eat those plums.
Okay, good.
Forgive me for that.
Yes, okay, good. So if you took out that second stanza, the realization, and he just says, "Forgive me, they were so delicious and so cold," I think we could see how it might be a justification for his actions too. Like, please forgive me, but like, just know I really, really enjoyed them. So like, at least you can have that, you know, you can feel good about me having having this pleasure. Yeah, Sammy.
I had to take this class last year, like all sophomores last year had to take it.
Mhm. Was it the emotional,
Yeah,
social,
but
emotional
and
one?
it was
Yeah.
like, they were talking, the one day I slightly paid attention, they talking about like, it's a lot of like, oh, you have depression, that's because you have Instagram, so
Oh, interesting.
I didn't like it that much.
Interesting.
Oh, the social media video where there was a whole documentary about
But
social
it was like, but they were talking about how you saying sorry, this is how it affected me, is not really an apology. It's like,
Interesting.
I'm sorry that I benefited from this.
Okay, I get that, but I also get how your Instagram aside actually applies here too. Because don't we like, at least it seems like people like seeing pictures of other people's food. Like, I feel like that's a thing, and maybe you don't follow like food accounts, but a lot of people do. And I feel like in the very early days of social media, like when I was in like college, everyone was like just posting about their lunch all the time, just this way for lunch, this way for dinner. And it seems like that's people liked sharing it and people liked seeing it too, or else you could just not follow those people. Like I follow like foodie accounts and stuff, and I'm just like, oh, what a beautiful cake. That looks delicious, you know, and then move on. This might be like revealing more about myself than I should be. I like food, all right?
Yeah, what's your
Um,
gram?
No, I don't post pictures of food. All my pictures are of my dog, but I think this kind of.
Drop the F.
Oh, I will. Okay, yeah. I'll show you next time. When you graduate, you can follow me on Instagram. It's not exciting, but I like to follow you guys. Anyway, so we get this kind of like vicarious pleasure through it, don't we? Looking at food. I don't think we're always like looking at it and being like jealous or mad that you don't have it. I mean, it was never your food to begin with, so it's a little bit different. But look at the way that he talks about it. Sorry, I'm kind of rushing compared to the first two lines, but they were delicious, so sweet and so cold. It's got, delicious is a nice word. So sweet and so cold. That kind of like sounds like you can picture it in your head, like these nice plums with like kind of a crisp skin, but then like juicy center, and they're cold. Cold plums are so much better than like room temperature plums. Yeah.
I feel like he's not only making a picture for us, but for like whoever's meant to be reading this. Like
Yes.
they're supposed to be reading this and imagining like them reaching into the, like opening the icebox and watching them wobble deliciously in there.
You
Pulling
fit
it
it in.
Just like bite into it, like
It's got a delicious wobble.
I guess.
But yes, I think that's right. It's trying to create that image, maybe not the wobble deliciously, but it's trying to create that image for the reader too, right? The sound there. Now we're gonna make some people mad because this is fun. This sound, delicious. Well, it starts with saving. Saving for breakfast. Delicious, so sweet and so cold. That S sound repeated. It's called sibilance.
So
Repeating an S sound.
So
Sibilance. Why do you think that he wants that sibilance there? What does it remind you of?
exaggeration.
Okay, it's a kind of exaggeration for what it sounds like. Or
I
what it
mean,
might taste
they
like.
were probably really sweet and they were definitely cold.
But
But
they're
like
plums.
the way he's saying it, he's like, those plums were really delicious. They were just so sweet
Mhm.
and so cold.
Right,
They were
right.
really good.
Right, and it's not like they're not cheesecake, it's just a plum, you know, and so it does seem like a little exaggerated. What else, what makes the sound? Snake. What's the most famous snake in all of literature?
The evil snake.
It's not Harry Potter.
The snake.
The Garden of Eden snake, yes, okay, so if he is eating a fruit, and at the end of this poem, there are snake sounds, what is that telling us? If we go real deep with this poem.
Temptation.
He's given in at least to the temptation of the devil to eating the forbidden fruit, right?
The forbidden fruit, the plums are the forbidden.
Yes, exactly. Exactly, and now he's gotten this extra knowledge that
I ate the plum.
Guys,
She was
this is
probably
symbol
saving
for
for
the
breakfast.
Bible, the Garden of Eden
this is the
story.
oldest story of all, the eating of the plum.
We cracked the code, y'all.
Yep. Okay, William Carlos Williams would absolutely hate that reading. He would say, no, I wanted it to sound like, S sounds also have like a kind of like, you know, a kind of hiss to it, almost like you're opening up the icebox and the cool air is sort of like coming out, right? Like, I don't know if he would say that, but he wanted all of his poems to be very literal. So when Kale was like, I'm gonna make sure that we read this poem not deep, surface level, William Carlos Williams would actually very much appreciate
Gosh
that.
dang it,
That's
I
what he
played
likes.
right
Yep,
into their
yep, exactly. You thought you were so clever.
I was not. I did exactly what they wanted.
Exactly. You've been tricked. Okay, so he was part of this movement called Imagism. And you can write this, like, I meant to mention this, you can write all over these packets. They are yours. You can, in fact, I really should have mentioned this because I would love you to write a ton on each poem, really like showing how much we can do with each poem. Anyway, imagism, early 20th century movement. It was very influential. They favored imagery and they rejected sentiment. So they said poetry is not about expressing deep feelings. They wanted to focus on the thing as thing. So this is not about the forbidden fruit. This is literally about a plum, he says. And they wanted to isolate objects into their literal meanings. So they were trying so hard to resist this idea that the plum could stand in for something else. This is not a metaphor about, desire, or this is not a metaphor about the tree of life. This is a plum. He is eating a plum, guys. And what's so cool is what they wanted to do was they wanted to relate the thing. Where did I write down how to say this though? Sorry, I have too many notes. Yeah, they wanted to present a thing, an image in substitution, let's say that. So the poem itself is actually about, like, it has the same intentions as an imagist poem. They wanted to present the thing and say, this is a substitution for the real thing. This is as close as I can get to describing what this like real thing is without giving you the real thing. And we want to focus on the thing itself. So the plum itself, he's conveying like all of these emotions that come with like, you delay gratification and you want that plum and yet you don't get to have that plum, all the kind of emotions between two people and like sharing an icebox and what that means. But mostly he wants to convey to you the experience of having a forbidden plum. Like he wants you to feel what that would feel like to eat the plum. And so this is just to say it's like this like gift he is giving to the person. Yes, it's an apology. I'm so sorry I ate your plums. But it is also like here's what I can give you in return. I can try to convey the experience of eating the plum for you as a substitution. It might not be as good, but like now you get this poem, like you get this thing still. So that I think starts to challenge again what we think poetry is. Because over here we've got all this like meaning and meter and artistic style and personal meaning, and we were talking so much about emotions, and all of the stuff that we got on the projection was all about like words burning and so on, and yet here he's writing about plums. Yeah.
I think it's sort of like, it's about a story kind of like just telling a story in a different way.
Yes. Okay.
'Cause we get that from the heat. We sort of like imagine this person. We can see them going into the ice box, pulling out that plum. We can see them talking to this other person, whichever way you decide they're talking to them. And then you can sort of see like their thought process, and then you reimagine it.
Yes. Yeah. Is it your favorite poem now?
It's pretty cool. It's up there.